text is a purpose or a motive alleged or an appearance assumed in order to cloak the real intention or state of affairs.
Initial access. OMI is trying to get into your network.
Listen, this is your manager, and I'm trying to send off an email. I got this document. Need you to confirm a few details. So go ahead and log in and tell me what you think. I need this now, so to make this convenient, here is the link. I'm a threat actor, phishing mark the email is urgent to distract you with it. So how fast you clicked it when you submitted the form with your password in it. You probably couldn't tell there was an actual difference in the URL. The domains look alike though. And to you it looks fine though, but mine had typos to make it look like yours. See, I was in the mood today to make your account a communal space, but then you activated your trap card, and I saw you had 2FA. But I just shrugged, I'ma shake it off. Got on kid gloves, I'ma take them off. Got your phone number, I'ma make a call. I'ma break this wall, it just makes me lol. I'm moving quick, I'm on a mission. Yeah, I heard your network is lit. I'm trying to get in. Yeah, I'm trying to get me a hit. When I go fishing. Yeah, you probably think it's legit. I got you clicking. Yeah. Hello. Hi. I'm calling you from the IT department. We have been under attack by some hackers, and we think that your account might be a target.
Oh no, how do I fix this?
No need to worry, I wrote up a ticket. You'll get a notification from your authenticator app, so please pass me them digits.
1 sec.
Okay.
Yeah. The code is 112345.
Thank you. You fell for the lie, so I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. Cutting it short like a crew cut. Probably think it won't happen to you, but it happened to Uber. They say you win some, you lose some. Boys got a smooth touch hacking you too, bruh. You know how I be creeping and I'm logging in your VPN. It probably looks anomalous. Some logs if you be keeping them. And probably unaware about the shares that have been peeping. And the reason I'll be seeking them, I'm looking for an easy win. You probably thought it was a magic trick, and you're mad you clicked. I'ma stack my chips and bet that a DA password is sitting in an admin script. I'm moving quick, I'm on a mission. Yeah, I heard your network is lit. I'm trying to get in. Yeah, I'm trying to get me a hit. When I go fishing. Yeah, you probably think it's legit. I got you clicking. I'm moving quick, I'm on a mission. Yeah, I heard your network is lit. I'm trying to get in. Yeah, I'm trying to get me a hit. When I go fishing. Yeah, you probably think it's legit. I got you clicking.
Hello again, everyone. Hello and welcome to another edition of Generative AI in Azure Study Series. So my name is David Okiade. So quick one before I introduce Kenny. The music that's playing, it's a very interesting one that was written and recorded by OMI, who is a well-known red teamer, Azure security specialist. So if you want to check out the music, make sure you go to the SoundCloud link that I put in the chat window, and you'll be able to support his work. But outside that, if you're yet to, please join the meetup group. So that's where you get notified of upcoming events that we have set up. So I'm speaking, I've been speaking and leading the session today, supported by Kenny. But we also have upcoming sessions that Kenny will be putting together. So make sure you join the community so that's where you get notified. That being said, let's, before we get into the conversation, hello, Kenny. Do you want to introduce yourself also? For those of
Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to today's session. My name is Kenny Klanko, so I'll be supporting basically today.
Nice. So Kenny is someone who I think did international relations, got into tech, doing amazing stuff in tech. So there's a lot of things to learn from her. So today we're going to go a step further from where we, the conversation that we're having previously, Kenny. So if you remember the conversation that we had previously, we started by saying, when we're thinking about AI on Azure, a lot of people make the assumption that let's get into creating something, right? So let's get into creating something. not necessarily looking to leverage what already exists. But we said when we talk about generative AI in Azure, the best place to start is to start by looking at what exists already, right? What exists in Azure already, and how can we leverage that? So that was like where we started in our conversation. So we started by looking at that. We talked about different things that we can leverage. So we talked about things like let's get the right pen. Okay, so we talked about Copilot for Azure. So Copilot for Azure, which is embedded directly in the Azure portal. So it's an AI assistant embedded in the Azure portal that we can use. We can ask it questions about Azure architecture. It can help us with troubleshooting. We said it's also trained on Microsoft documentation, so it can help us to answer questions. But also it has access to our environment through Azure Resource Graph. So it can help us to answer questions about our resources in Azure. So then after that, we moved and talked about VS Code or Visual Studio Code plus GitHub Copilot. And we said there are different extensions that we can install on top of VS Code with GitHub Copilot that can help us with Azure. So we talked about some of the different extensions last week, and we showed last 2 weeks, and we showed some of them in action. So that was where we got to in our last conversation. So we like to keep these study sessions short, so we'll get right to the point. So today, Kenny, you'll be glad that today we're going to start talking about how we can create our own AI agents. How can we create our own AI agents in Azure? So that's what we're going to be looking at today. But before we get into that, let's lay some groundwork. Kenny, what's your definition of an agent? Because if you talk to different people may probably have like different ideas about what they call an agent. But for you, with your studies, how would you describe an agent?
An agent is basically an
An
assistant.
assistant. That's awesome.
Yes.
It's an assistant. So, and what makes an agent, for example, different from, let's say, just a simple chat assistant? So, you're right, an agent is an AI assistant. But what makes it different from other types of AI assistants that exist? So for the audience, also put your thoughts in the chat window. So put your thoughts in the chat window, and we're going to highlight that as we go. So what do you think, Annie? What makes an agent different from other types of assistants, of AI assistants that are out there?
I believe that it can perform tasks based on the prompting that you give to it.
Awesome. I love that, Kenny. So what you're saying is that an AI agent is not just something that can help us to answer questions and give us information, right? It's something that can actually go take an action on her behalf. That's awesome. I really love that example. I really love that. And I remember last time that I gave an example of an AI agent that I was testing. You know, I had like an AI agent that I was testing to call. I remember I gave the example of calling my wife, and I was like, hey, go call her, ask this information, get the response, and give me back the response. And I told you how my wife picked up the phone, and she dropped the phone, and she went, I'm not speaking to an assistant. You want to speak to me, come speak to me directly. So it's an AI assistant that can perform tasks for us. So that's where we're going to start today, Kenny. So we're going to start today by looking at the evolution of AI assistants. So let's bring up, I have like a little bit of slide, and we're going to go right into demo. So AI assistants have gone through different levels of evolution, right? So the first real evolution that happened like about a few years ago with the release of ChatGPT was the architectural pattern of prompt completion. So that's a type of AI assistant that can answer questions for us, right? It can answer questions for us. Say, how do I do this? It looks at its training information. So it's been trained on information from the internet and gives us a response. We ask it another thing, and it generates a response for us. We ask it different thoughts. It uses the model to do the processing, the transformer processes it, and throws out the response. Those types of assistants, they have certain limitations attached to them. Some of the limitations that they have attached to them is the limitation that's very popular, which is hallucination, which is sometimes you ask the assistant something. The thing that you have asked the assistant is not part of the training knowledge of the assistant. So what does it do? It makes things up. It just goes, let me just tell you something that sounds good, but it actually is not real. So that's one of the limitations of those types of assistants. Another limitation that they have is that they do not have access to private knowledge. For example, Kenny, even though she's a graduate, she's probably doing a business, making tons of money, lots of money in the bank account and all of that stuff. So Kenny is like, oh, I want to analyze all these millions in my bank account. The AI assistant goes, I don't have access to information in your bank account to be able to give you that information. So it does not have access to private knowledge. Is another limitation that has. And of course, it can't take any actions. So those are the limitations. So from there, we moved into another type of assistant, which is called the RAG architecture. So I'm not sure, is that something that you've heard about before, Kenny, in terms of the RAG system, the RAG architecture?
Yeah.
Oh, so the RAG architecture is really popular. So for the audience, if you've heard about the RAG architecture, system before, just put your thoughts about what RAG is, put that in the chat window. So Kenny, what RAG does is RAG is a way to provide private knowledge to AI assistants. So essentially what we're doing is there is a user that's going to be asking questions to an assistant. But the AI assistant has its own knowledge from what it has been trained on with knowledge from the internet, but it does not have access to your private knowledge. So things like maybe corporate information, maybe information from your bank account and all of that stuff. So what we can do is we can introduce other components that will first of all go to that private knowledge store, retrieve the information, and then provide that information to the assistant. So that way the assistant not only has information about what it has been trained on, it also has information about your private knowledge that you're giving it access to. So that is called retrieve augment generation. So you retrieve the data, your private data, you augment it, and you provide it to the assistant so the assistant can generate a response to you based off of that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So what are some of the use cases that you think for this kind of architecture? What are some of the use cases that you think in terms of people maybe using RAG instead of just using direct prompt completion? Any use case that you can think of?
Yeah.
So some of the common use case would be enterprise chatbots, right? So because enterprise, you have a lot of internal knowledge that's not available on the internet, right? So maybe you have internal intranet within the organization that contains private information of your customers, who you're doing business with, and all of that stuff. So now you can implement a RAG architecture to retrieve that information, augment it, pass it to the model processes it, and gives you a response. So that's the other evolution that we had. The third evolution, which is still currently going on, so let's clear the screen a bit. The third evolution is agentic AI. So that is where agents come into place. Agentic AI takes things a step further. We are not just providing the AI assistant with knowledge, with private knowledge. What we're actually doing here is that we're providing the AI assistant with the tools. We're providing it tools, and the tools allows it to take actions. So that's one of the main differences. So that's an evolution. We started from it can just answer simple questions based on information that it already knows. We moved to we can provide it with private knowledge, so it's more grounded in private information, so it's not giving us hallucinations. And then we've moved from there to let's give it tools so that it can take actions for us. So, for example, with agentic AI, with agents, Kenny can now say, hey, can you go transfer this money from this account and move it to the other account? And it won't just give you information about what you should do. It will actually make the necessary API calls to go take that action for you. Right? So does that make sense, Kenny? Does that make sense in terms of like those three evolutions?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So those three evolutions and stuff like that. So by the way, if anyone has any question as we go through this, please feel free to put your questions in the chat window and we're going to address them. So Kenny, also, if you have any questions, feel free to also throw the question. That would be absolutely fine. So now let's go back, because today, one of the things I want to show you today is how to create AI agents in Azure. And I'll use a very interesting example of what that is. But before we do that, we've seen the evolution. Let's go back to what an agent is. Kenny gave us that definition earlier. It says an agent is an AI assistant that can take actions on our behalf. So let me throw out this question to you then, Kenny. If you don't have any questions for me, I have questions for you. So we already established that. Is that you ask me a question or I ask you a question? One of the two. There will be questions. So what do you think an AI assistant needs in order to take an action on your behalf? What are the different components that you think that it needs in order to be able to take an action on your behalf?
A prompt, which is basically like an instruction they are giving to it.
Nice. I love that. We have to give it an instruction. That's awesome, because this assistant, they operate based off instructions that's provided by a human. So we have to give it an instruction. So that's awesome. So apart from an instruction, what else do you think we need to provide to it?
Then maybe an environment.
An environment? I absolutely love this. We have an environment. And by environment, I'm guessing you're referring to it has to do some processing.
Yes.
Right? It's not processing in thin here. It still needs compute and CPU to do some processing. So it needs an environment to run on that in that environment. So awesome. It's an environment. What else do you think it needs? Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you one question on that side. Yeah, Kenny. Now, if you say to an agent to, let's say, move money from my Zenith Bank and move it to my First Bank account, and then book a flight ticket for me to South Africa, the agent would need to plan what he needs to do, right? Because it's like a personal assistant, right? So if I have a personal assistant, or if you have a personal assistant, you say to your personal assistant, oh, can you transfer this one from here to here and then book this ticket? The assistant will need to have a plan, right, of how they will do that. It's the same with an AI agent. It also needs to create a plan of what it's going to do. What will it use to create that plan?
Maybe a workspace.
This is what it needs to create that plan. It needs a model. Because the model is the brain. That is what is going to take the instruction that you mentioned here, Kenny. The model is what is going to take your instruction and create a plan and say, here is the plan of action that I'm going to take. Because Kenny has given me this instruction, I have this plan of action that I'm going to take. So it needs a model also. And the model is what is going to use to reason and to plan. So awesome. Thanks very much for that, Kenny. So let's go back to the components that an AI agent needs in order to work. It needs a model to reason, like we just said now. The other thing that it needs is what Kenny helped us to answer earlier, in that it needs an instruction, right? So Kenny gave us that answer earlier. It needs instructions. The other thing that it needs is it needs tools. It needs tools to use. So it's like, okay, for example, again, Kenny as a personal assistant, she said to your personal assistant, move this, transfer this money from this account to this account, and then after that, book a flight ticket, and after that, call my sister, call my dad, and inform them of this. The assistant needs certain tools, right? Number one, they will need a phone to use to call, right? They'll probably need access to your bank account in order to be able to move that money from point A to point B. They'll probably need a web browser, something that they can use to book your flight ticket. That's the equivalent of giving an AI agent tools. Maybe we're giving it knowledge, we're giving it tools that it can use to take action. We're supplying additional information that it can store in its memory. So we're giving it tools. And then based off of all of this, the agents can then go take an action and then complete the tasks. So those are the 4 things that we need. Does that make sense, Kenny? Any questions?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? If there are no questions, remember that means that questions are coming. Any question? By the way, the audience, any questions that you have, put in the chat window and we're going to address the questions. So let's see something, Kenny, very quickly, which is how do we build agents? What do you think, Kenny? I want to start building an agent on Azure. How do we build an agent? We have 3 options that we can use when we're talking about building agents in Azure. Option number 1, it's a do-it-yourself approach. It's called infrastructure as a service. So Kenny, I'll probably come back to you here because you don't have any questions for me, so I have questions for you. Infrastructure as a service. What's infrastructure as a service? From your understanding, what is infrastructure as a service?
Can go ahead with that.
Okay, if you have questions for me, I've got questions for you. For the audience, what's infrastructure as a service?
I will have questions for you later on. Not right now.
Okay.
I'm processing.
That still does not make you safe, Kenny. So as long as there's no ongoing flowing questions, I'll have constant questions for you. Anyways, infrastructure as a service, that is like renting a virtual machine in the cloud. Okay. So you're like, hey, cloud provider, don't need to give me many tools. Just give me a virtual machine. I'll do everything else by myself. Right? It's like you're hungry. You want to cook. You go to the market and then you buy the raw materials. And you're like, hey, just give me the raw materials. Give me the carrot, give me the vegetables, give me the raw materials. I'll handle the cooking by myself. I don't need you to do the cooking. I can handle it. So that's infrastructure as a service. You go to Azure and you say, give me virtual machines. I will use my own frameworks that I choose. So for example, have you heard about like some frameworks? So for example, you have frameworks like LangChain. Have you heard of these frameworks before? LangChain, Semantic Kernel. Have you heard of them before?
Yes.
Not really? Yeah, you've heard about them. Yeah. So if you've heard about them before, but you're not sure what they are about, what people use them for, here's what they use them for. They use them to build agents. It's what people use them for. But this is like, don't worry, I can handle this by myself. Oh, by the way, 1 minute. I thought I'm sharing my screen, but I can't see my screen being shared. Okay, have I just been sharing the web browser since morning?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. This is so interesting. Oh, apologies for that, everyone. I thought I was sharing. Let me do that again. So, oh my God, I've been doing all kinds of like writing. Oh no. Oh no. I've been doing all kinds of writing and presentation. I did not know that I was just sharing my screen. Oh my God, look at all of this. So, anyways, it is what it is. We've got to move on. So let's go back to this. So here we are. So we have infrastructure as a service. So we've got to rent our own virtual machines in the cloud. And we use frameworks like, again, LangChain semantic kernel to build our agents. The other option that we have is to use software as a service. Kenny, do you know what software as a service is? What software as a service?
You can go ahead with that, please.
So software as a service is where Microsoft has done all the necessary implementation. You just need to create your own orchestration. This is the equivalent of you going into a restaurant. You're like, I don't have time to be cutting the food, washing the food, putting it on fire, and doing all of that stuff. I just want you to bring the prepared food in the plate. All I have to do is put my spoon in it and put it in my mouth. And that's all I want to do. So that's like software as a service. So we have something called, bless you, we have something called Copilot Studio that we can use to create agents. So we can use this to create agents. We can also use this to create agents. But the difference between this and this is that with this one, you have full flexibility, right? Just like when you go to the market, the ingredients that you buy, it's in your hand. You decide whatever you want in the food. But when you go to the restaurant, you don't decide what is in the food. They've decided what is in the food. You just eat what they provide to you. That is Copilot Studio. You can use it to also build an agent, but you're restricted in terms of the options that you have. And the final option, which is the one that I'll be showing you today, is Platform as a Service. And with Platform as a Service, we have a service in Azure called Azure AI Foundry. Azure AI Foundry is the service that we can use to create agents in Azure. So this is sort of like a best of both worlds. It gives us flexibility. At the same time, it takes care of certain things for us. Have you ever tried this kind of cooking before, like anywhere you order something that is not raw food from the market? It's like they've already prepared like the portion of the food, the portion of the materials that you're going to use for the cooking and everything. They've already prepared everything. You just have to do the mixing. Have you ever done like any type of cooking like that before? Usually I've seen like people do that with baking. Like you order like for like a baking kit. They
Yeah,
send
I've
you
seen
the
people
portion
do
of the
that.
flour. Exactly. So that's like AI Foundry. It's like it's raw materials, but you're not having to do all the measurements. They've done the measurement, they've done part of the work for you. They've done the measurement of the flour, of all the different ingredients that you use for the cake. All you just need to do is mix it up and put it in the oven. Yes, you're still doing some cooking, but you're not doing all the cooking, right? You're not doing all the measurement and everything relating to the cooking. So that is Azure AI Foundry. So that's the option that I'll be showing you in a demo today. And guess what, Kenny? Azure AI Foundry has all the different components of an agent that we talked about earlier. It has models. What does AI agents use models for again, Kenny? What do they use models for?
To generate responses.
To generate responses and then to do what? So AI, we're talking about AI agent that can take an action on our behalf. What else do they use models for? We talked about it just a few minutes ago, which is they use models to plan. Remember, they use model to reason and to create a plan. So when you say transfer money from this bank account to this bank account to an AI agent, it's going to create a plan. So what it's going to use to create the plan is the model that it has access to. And then, of course, we have our agent, and our agent is going to have access to different tools. So let's talk about some quick part of this. So let's go to Azure AI Foundry and let's go create an agent. So here's what I'm going to show you today, Kenny, and then we're going to call it a day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to create an agent. We're going to look at all the different components that we talked about. So we're going to start. So the agent that I'm going to be creating will be an agent that can create a ticket in Azure DevOps. Now, do you know what Azure DevOps is, Kenny? I've told you the questions will keep coming.
I know. I have one question for you before we move on.
Yeah, yes, please. Please go ahead.
Okay, so like chat models, they take prompts, same thing as
Yes.
agents. Like
Yes.
what differentiates the two from each other?
Good question. The difference is the ability to take action. That's the difference. Chat agents, they take prompts, but they don't take actions, right? They take prompts and they give you a response, right? So you go to ChatGPT, you say, ChatGPT, for example, you say, how do I move money from my Zenith account? What ChatGPT will probably do is that it's going to go to its knowledge from what is being pre-trained with, which is information from the internet, and look for that information there. If it does not find that, it can go to the web and search. And then once it's done that, it comes back and gives you a response and says, here's how you do that. But it cannot go take that action for you. An AI agent it uses a model, but it doesn't just only rely on models. It has tools. So what you can do is, for example, you oh, that's really, really nice to hear, Mohammed. Thanks very much for the kind words, Mohammed. So Mohammed said, I used to follow your live lectures on the AZ104 curriculum during the pandemic days. Helped me pass the exam. I was wanting to say thank you very much. Thanks very much for the kind words. Really appreciate that, Mohammed. And hopefully this series will also help you in terms of the AI revolution or evolution that's going on in terms of some understanding relating to that. Thanks. So, Kenny, now to answer your question, so an AI agent, the difference is it's not just using a model. You can actually go give it a tool. So the tool, for example, can be access to your Zenith Bank. So instead of just saying, how do I do this? You can actually say, go do this. And it's going to use this tool to access your Zenith Bank account and move that money from here to here. So that's the difference. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the example that I'm going to show you. So I'm going to show you how to create an AI agent in Azure AI Foundry. And the AI agent, again, will be an agent that can create tickets in Azure DevOps. Okay, so let's go to do this. So the first thing that we need, Kenny, if we want to do this, is we need to create an Azure AI Foundry project. I'm going to talk to you about what all of this means later. I just want to show you first, and then we'll talk about it in other study sessions. So let's start first with, you need an Azure AI Foundry project. So here I am in Azure AI Foundry. I get to it by going to ai.azure.com. And then I can go create a new project. And when I go to create a new project, it says, do I want to create a hub resource or do I want to create an Azure AI Foundry resource? Now, for the purpose of creating basic agents, which is what I'm going to be showing you today, option number 1 is enough. So I'll go to that. I'll go to next. I give my project a name. I'll call it Azure DevOps, Azure DevOps agent project, and specify the subscription that it's going to live in, and specify a region for it. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create this project. So that's the first thing that we need, Ken, is we need to create our project. So once we've created our project, what's the next thing that we need to do? Remember, what we want to do is we want to create an agent that we can use to create tickets in Azure DevOps. This is the goal. But how we get to that goal is what I'm showing you. So first of all, create an Azure AI Foundry project. Number two thing that we do is we have to deploy a model in the project. So, Kenny, another question for you. I've asked you this question before, but I'll keep asking you. What does an AI agent use a model for? What does an AI agent use a model for?
It uses it to carry out the tasks that you
No, not to carry out the task, but to plan, to
yeah.
create a plan of how it will carry out the task. Not to carry out the task, but to create a plan of how it will carry out the task. So this is like giving a brain to your agent, is what we want to do. The brain is what it uses to think, right? How will I fulfill these tasks that Kenny wants me to do? It needs to be able to create a plan. So we need to give it a model because that is what it's going to use to create that plan. So that's the next thing that I'm going to do. So again, creating a project itself can take a while to complete. Oh, by the way, I think it just finished creating my model. So let's go to so it's asking for additional permissions. We're just going to do that. Okay, there we go. So let's go to deploy our model. So if I go to the left corner, I can go to deploy model. We have different types of model. I'm going to select just a GPT-4 model in this case. So in this case, I can just specify, I can just scroll down and look for a GPT-4 model. Let's go for GPT-4o, and I'll deploy this model. So now we have the model, and it's going to use the model to create a plan. What is the next thing that we need to do, which is number 3? We need to go create an agent in Foundry. So we need to go create an agent in Foundry. So let's go to do this. So I've deployed the model, and now we need to go create an agent. So to create an agent, I just need to scroll up, and under here you see agent here, and then in agent, what I can do is I can go to create a new agent. So you have the option there. So by the way, it's trying to create one for me, but I can just click on new agent, and it's going to create a new agent. So let's call this new agent, Azure DevOps Ticket Creator. So this is an agent that we can use to create tickets in Azure DevOps. So now we need to now start bringing everything together. So this agent that we've created, the components that we talked about earlier, Kenny, we have to provide those components to the agent. For example, we need to provide that agent a model. So what does it use a model to do, Kenny? I'll keep asking you the question.
To create a
To
plan.
create a plan, there we go. It uses the model to create a plan. So let's go give it the model. So if I scroll down, and you can see on that deployment here, I can specify the model that I want this agent to use. So I give it that model. That's what it's going to use to create a plan. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to give it instructions. And here's one of the things that you have to know, Kenny. The instructions has to be clear. It has to be very clear in terms of, hey, AI agent, this is your task to do. Let me give you an example of an instruction that I'm going to be using for the model that I'm creating. So let me go show you an example of my model instruction. So I have an example instruction here. So let's go to my instruction. Let's go to that. Okay, so here we go, Kenny. So look at this instruction. Hmm, okay, let's go to, yeah, that this will do. So look at this instruction. And I'll put it in Notepad here. Look at this sample instruction. Look at how verbose this is. Number one, I told it its role. I say, hey, hello, you're an AI agent. So by the way, let me put that here. I think I missed that out. So it's like, I'm like, so on every new thread, so new thread means a new session. So whenever a user opens a new session to you, I want you to immediately greet the user, say, hi there, hello, introduce yourself to the user, say, I'm the AI agent that helps you create Azure DevOps work items. And then here are the 4 things that I want you to ask from the user. I want you to ask the user for the title of the ticket that they want to create, the description of the ticket, the priority of the ticket, which is one of these 4 priorities, who they want the ticket assigned to, and who they want it assigned to should be part of this domain name, which is my domain name, carviscloud.com. Then I want you to validate the 4 information that you collected from the user. Make sure that the title and description are not empty. Make sure that the priority is an integer from 1 to 4. Make sure that the person that they specify that they want to assign it to belongs to this domain. Then what you're also going to do, Mr. or Mrs. Agent, is once you have all the 4 fields, you're going to use these 4 fields to create an Azure DevOps work item. And you have to format the information in a JSON that looks like this. And once you've formatted it, what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that your tone and style meets it. So you can see that this is very verbose, Kenny, right? It's very, very, like, it's very, very verbose. Do you think I wrote this by myself? What do you think, Kenny? Do you think I wrote this by myself? What do you think? So do you think I wrote it by myself, or do you think I used ChatGPT to write it?
It can be both ways.
So you're right, because I only just gave ChatGPT an instruction. I say, hey, ChatGPT, I'm creating an agent that I want to do this. I don't have time to be writing all these verbose instructions and everything. Turn it into a verbose instruction that I can give the agent, and then I modified it as it gave me options. So that's exactly, so you're exactly right. So that's what I did. I gave ChatGPT, and it helped me to expand it. So I'll put the instructions here, and I'll say, agent, that's your instructions. So I've done that. And you notice that whenever I make any changes here, it automatically saves it. So I don't need to go click save. Whenever I make any changes automatically, but I can also click save. It's very small here, but there's a save option here that I can use to click save. So now we've given it instructions on what it's going to do. What else do we need to provide this agent? There's something else missing from the component list that we talked about, Kenny. What is missing? Something is missing here. It has the model. The model is to do what, Kenny?
To make
make
a
a
plan.
plan. Exactly. It has a model that you can use to make a plan. It has instructions of what it's going to be doing. There's still like some components that is missing from what we looked at earlier. What component is missing? There's one more component that's missing. What do you think, Kenny? So for the audience, if you know what component is missing, put it in the chat window. What component is missing? So our agent is almost there, but we're missing one component. What component is it missing? So in the interest of time, let me go back. So we've given it the model, we've given it instructions, but we need to give it tools. So because the tool is what is going to use to carry out the action. Now, Azure Agent Service in Azure Foundry, Azure AI Foundry supports multiple tools. So if I scroll down, I can give it knowledge, additional knowledge, maybe give it private information. I can give it actions. Action is what I want to give it, because in this case, I want it to actually go create a ticket for me. So let me go add an action. And you can see different types of actions that we can use. We can give it a code interpreter action. Essentially, we can give it access to any API out there to go use the API to take an action. So that means we can take any action as long as the service has an open API 3.0 specification. This agent can take an action with that. I can give it a logic app action. If I have a logic app that can do something, I can say, use this logic app to take this action. I can give it a custom function or an Azure function. So we have a range of different categories of actions or tools that we can give it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select Azure Logic App because I have a logic app that I'm going to use to take this action. And you can see that it has some built-in ones from Microsoft, like send an email using Outlook, get rows from a SQL table. What I have is I have my own action, and I have a logic app. I have a logic app that I'm going to use. So I can see that it's not showing up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go show that to you from another project. So let's go to the other projects that I have, and let's go have a look. So I already have a similar agent there, and I'm going to go show that to you. So let's go to Azure DevOps Ticket Creator. And if I go to under action, so what I did here was I went to under add, I selected logic app, I went to under my action, and then I selected my logic app, which I created earlier. So that logic app. So I selected that and I created that. So now I've given it an action. So now that we've given it a tool, let me go back to this. So we give it a tool and it can use the tool to take an action. So now that we have this, let's go test out our agent. So let's go test out our agent. So let's go back to this. So what I'm going to do here is, this is Azure DevOps, by the way, Kenny. If I refresh, you see that at the moment, there's no work item that's created here. 0 work items. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an agent to do that. So let's go back to the agent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go test it out and try it in the playground. And it takes me to a playground to test this out. So let's start by saying hello. Let's see if it follows our instruction. Remember that in our instruction, we said when a new thread is opened, greet the user, introduce yourself, and say, I'm an AI agent that helps you to create Azure DevOps work item. So let's go to hello. I press enter. And let's see what happens. It says, let's start by collecting a few details. So what details does it want me to do? What's the description? So I'll say the title is create a new backend for the pricing service. And I press enter. And let's see what happens. It says, got it. You've provided, create a new backend for pricing service. It said, give me a detailed description of this work item. Say, the pricing service needs to be updated to the latest version of Python. Seems like we will need to migrate it instead of a simple update. So I give it a detailed description, I press enter. Then it asks me, it says, okay, I've got 2 of the 4 things that I need. I need to specify priority, critical, medium, high. So I say, oh, this is super critical. So I say, very urgent. I'll say critical. Enter. And it says, okay, got it. I'll set the priority to 1, critical. It says, last thing I need is who to assign it to. I'll go ahead and assign it to my wife. Say, assign it to Brenda at Travis Cloud azure.com. And it says, thank you. And look at what it's doing now. And look at that. It says, the Azure DevOps work item has been created successfully. If you need anything else, let me know. So what it's done is, in the background, Kenny, it's used the model to create a plan. And the plan that I created, I'll show you where to review that in a minute. We're going to round up in a minute. The plan that I created was, okay, I've got to go create an Azure DevOps ticket. This is a very simple plan, right? Right. So it follows the instructions. Then it goes to look in its tool sets and says, okay, I have access to these tools. Which tools fit best to complete this task? Oh, I have a tool here, a Logic App tool that can create Azure DevOps ticket. So I'm going to use that tool to go complete that action. That was what it did there. But let's go verify whether it worked. So let's go to work items here and let's refresh this. And if I refresh this, and there you go, you can see here, it created the ticket, it assigned it to Brenda, and that ticket is there. So now I have an agent I can use to create tickets in this. And by the way, if I want to review that, I can go to the thread logs, and it's going to show me a full log of what happened behind the scene, which is, this was when I first joined. And when I first joined, it used the model to generate the greeting and sent the greeting to me. And then it started asking me questions. So it says, user provided this information. So it sends that to the LLM. The LLM looked at it and says, okay, the plan is going well. Let's ask the user for the next thing. So the LLM replies and says, ask the user for the next thing. So that's the response from the LLM. So then it goes, then I put in the next information. Then the LLM sends that to the LLM. LLM goes, good, good, good. The plan is going well. Let's ask the user for the next thing. And it just went through all of that one by one. And then till it got to the step of, now we have to go take an action. Then now it begins to look in its toolbox. And it's like, okay, here's what I need to do. What tools do I have access to? Then it found a tool for Logic App. And then the LLM used that tool to go complete that action. And then it finally gave me a response back. So that's an example of an agent. So we'll pause there for today. We've gone way over time than I expected. Any questions that you have, Kenny? Any questions? Does it make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I think I have one quick one.
Yes, please.
Like,
Please go ahead.
how can we measure and monitor the agent's performance?
Very, very good question. And in this series, we're definitely going to come to this. Now, one of the things that I was showing you at the end here is I was showing you like the thread logs.
Yeah.
One of the things that you notice there is that it's recording two things. It's recording the time to completion, and it's also recording the amount of tokens that it took to perform that action. So I've got the time that it took and the token. So with this information now, I can use this as a benchmark. So for example, if I want to check if one model performs faster than another model, or if one type of action performs faster than another type of action, I can go modify the mix of what I give my agent and then monitor the thread logging for the performance and also for the token. But there's more information to that. But this is the starting point, but there's more information to that. Well, in this series, we're going to talk about observability and doing like evaluation and monitoring performance in more details. But that's a very good question. Awesome. So if there are no questions, I hope that this has been useful. At least now we understand what an agent is. We understand the three key components that an agent needs. It needs a model. I won't ask you anymore, Kenny. This is a model, it needs instructions, and it needs a tool. It needs tools. And what does it use the tool for? That's the one I'll ask you, Kenny. What does it use the tool for? It uses the tool to do what? Carry out the actions. Awesome. Well done. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. So we'll see you next 2 weeks again in this series. But otherwise, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next few weeks. Have a lovely rest of the morning, evening, afternoon. See you next time. Bye, everyone.